Here we go! Peachy!
Here I go!
What's going on? We're back for another edition of the Funtendo Game Show, where we give you game, we talk about life, and we talk about everything that matters to you.
100%.
Let's jump right into the topic that I think is very important for us to cover today, and that topic is children. We're going to start off by discussing the 5 W's of having children, who to have children with, what's important when having children with that person, when to have children, where to have children, and why to have children. We're also going to discuss some of the other things that are important to having children, such as the cost of having children. Let's jump right into it. It's important to understand that before you jump into a relationship, we talk about this in some of my other previous videos, but you need to have the 5 C's. You need to have your own career. You need to have your own crib. You need to have good credit. You need to have your own car, and you need to have your own cash. Now, those aren't necessarily in that specific order, but pretty close to it. I also mentioned in other videos that you're going to be looking for a partner that also has those same things to offer. You're also going to want a strong partner that also can meet that criteria, so that later on, as things come up in life, you'll be able to handle them together, and it'll be a lot easier to maintain your relationship.
I'm gonna show you.
When you start talking about having children, that is a very important and very life-changing decision. So having children is going to bring out the best or the worst of whatever your existing relationship is with them. Now that we've talked about the who that you want to have a child with, let's talk about what should be important when deciding to have children. If you've already got the 5 C's checked off on both sides, meaning you have them and your potential partner has them, then you need to explore other areas of your potential compatibility. Those other areas are going to include child rearing. Those other areas are going to include how you value spending money. Those other areas will also include budgeting, and then also dividing the specific responsibilities that you would have, whether it be at home or whether it would be with other types of things related to the children, and or other things that are just going to be as a part of making your relationship work, like day-to-day things.
100%.
After you've kind of figured out if you're compatible in terms of some of those different things, you guys have an agreed value in terms of how you want to discipline your children. You guys have agreed values on how you want your children to be educated. You guys have agreed values on how you want to actually raise that child in terms of the experiences you'd like to be able to offer them, and then also what types of things are going to be acceptable and not acceptable in terms of raising that child. After those things are in place, then you got a check mark. You've got the what. Now, let's talk about the when. Now, this is a tricky one, and I have my own opinion, and maybe some people will disagree, and maybe some people won't disagree. But I personally believe that
It's in
you
my
only have
code.
a very narrow window to have children as a man if you want to be able to do certain things. Like, maybe you want to be active. Maybe you want to be able to show your kids how to play sports. Maybe you want to actually be able to get out there and be physically active and do things, take vacations, go places, actually play with your kids and show them things that you can't do when you're necessarily older. In my personal opinion, ideally, the time window would probably be closer towards your mid to late 20s to your mid 30s. To explain my reasoning, I'm going to go into it a little bit.
Shut your mouth.
I think that by the time you actually reach your mid to late 20s, you should kind of have some of those other things figured out. You should have a career in place. You should have a house or a crib. You should have that in place, more than likely, if you are on your business. You should have a car. You should have some cash, and you should have good credit.
100%.
Through your early 20s, you're actually going to be building those things up so that you could position yourself for the win, in this case, when to have children. If you were like a lot of most young whippersnappers out here, you probably, messed around a lot in your 20s.
I don't care.
Just totally screwed off your early 20s, and you're getting close to 30 and you ain't really got your 5 C's together. You got a career, but you ain't got a crib. You don't really own a house. You might have a car, but maybe your credit's not that good. You might have a little bit of cash, but definitely not enough cash to actually be raising a family and bringing another child into this world. Those are some of the specific criteria that I think factor into the win, which is specifically the age. In my opinion, these are going to be the best and most productive years that you can have as a parent in terms of being able to offer them the opportunity to be kind of aligned with them to be able to do physical types of activities. Let's say you decide, okay, that doesn't work for me. I wasn't, financially stable. I didn't have the 5 C's together until I was 40.
I don't care.
Okay. Now let's look at it. By the time you get out there to actually start playing these, sports and doing physical activities with your kid, if they're 10 years old, you're going to be 50 years old now. I'm not saying that 50-year-olds are not in shape, because some of them are, but by the time you get to be 50 years old, you start having miscellaneous aches and pains.
100%.
Your back's hurting for no given reason. You're at work, working with your hands all day. You're catching arthritis. Again, it depends on the individual and the individual's health. If you don't value that, and you don't value being able to do physical activities, if you don't value being able to go on high quality vacations with your children and be very active with them while they're younger, then maybe you can afford to wait a little bit longer to have children. That's going to be your call. Again, it depends on what you specifically value, but for the purposes of what I believe is going to allow you to maximize your opportunity to be aligned with them to do physical types of things like sports, I would say your window is going to be from, again, 26 to 28, starting to have children, from 34 to 36 and ending having children. Once you get past 36 and you're having kids, you're raising kids until you're in your early 50s. And for me personally, I don't really see that as an ideal situation, based on the fact that after you start to get older, you're going to have different physical needs yourself. I hope that you are still in good health by the time you're 50, but when you get to be 50, if you haven't been maintaining your body, you might be breaking down by 50.
You've heard that before, right?
People out here breaking down before they're 50, so you might not even make it to be 50 before you start experiencing health problems, before you start experiencing a decline in your physical health and the ability to actually be as active as you might want to be.
It's in my code.
With that being said, that's the win. Where you want to have children. Not in one of these high cost of living cities unless you make a lot of money. Let's get to it. If you live in the top cities in the United States, the highest cost of living areas, Northeast, the West Coast, the Southeast, down in Miami. If you live on the East Coast, DC, Virginia, Maryland.
Barack has already told you.
Connecticut. If you live in New York City, if you live in any of these areas, and then let's go to the West Coast. If you live in San Francisco, if you live in Los Angeles. Now it's even getting to the point like that in areas like Las Vegas. Phoenix, Arizona, definitely on the list. If you live in any of these areas, you really got to consider how the financial aspect is going to affect your overall quality of life. People think, I want to have a kid, and here's why. They have their why together, which we'll get to in 1 second. And they have a child, and they don't really understand the cost that's going to come with that from a financial perspective. They don't really understand the cost that's going to come from that choice based upon other circumstances as well, like the sacrifices that you're going to make, both time, money, and resources and attention.
I'm not mentioning no
So
names.
those are just a couple of things that you definitely need to factor in terms of having multiple kids in these high cost of living areas. It's pretty much almost out of the question unless you have a serious high income and a lot of extra money above and beyond what your lifestyle is. But no matter how much money you're making, unless you're in the top couple of percent, 5 to 10%, you're probably going to be having to make some sacrifices and not be able to do some of the things that you were previously able to do before having children, if you should choose to do that. We talked about the where a little bit. Let's talk about the where just a little bit more. Now, maybe there's other more ideal places where it's not going to cost as much to have children. Maybe some areas in Texas, maybe some areas in the Midwest. You know, you've got the Ohios, you've got the Indianas. Maybe you're down south in Mississippi.
No.
Maybe you're in Louisiana.
No.
Maybe you're in Oklahoma. There's
No.
a lot of pockets throughout the country that are not as high cost. Don't get me wrong. You're not going to be able to escape the high cost of food inflation and gas inflation and transportation and maybe some other costs that are associated with having a child. Medical, things like that. But overall, your cost of living for potentially covering the basics and then also having extra money for other extracurricular activities that your child might want to do or other experiences, hobbies, and things like that, those may be a little bit less than if you are in one of those major cities that I previously mentioned. Now let's jump into the why. Let's jump into the fifth of the W's, which is the why. Why do you want to have kids? Is it because other people are having kids? Is it because you're under pressure from your parents to have kids? Is it because you're getting older and your biological clock is ticking and you kind of feel like it's now or never? Is it because you're under pressure from a partner and they want to have a child? Is it because you think that it's going to be cool because your other friends have kids and we'll set up play dates and it's going to be a bowl of cherries? I don't know what's going through your mind specifically on why.
It's in my code.
However, making a choice to have a child needs to have a very solid why behind it. And the why has to come from a selfless place. Because to become a parent, you're going to have to become very selfless if you want to be a good parent. If you just want to have kids so that you can potentially, I'm going to be a cool parent. I'm going to have kids. I'm going to look like the cool parent. You know, you want to have kids so that you think that your kids are going to be able to, you know, help bear the burden later on. You know, when you retire, they're going to take care of me when I get old. And, you know, all the kids, well, they could start cleaning up around the house a little bit after they get old enough.
You've heard that before,
Those
right?
aren't reasons to have kids. Another reason to not just jump into having a kid is, okay, my biological clock is ticking, or your partner's biological clock is ticking.
It's in my code.
What does that got to do with anything? You know, too many times I see this again and again and again. People get into relationships and then right away they end up with a partner that is pregnant. Talking to you fellas out here, the reason I'm throwing this out there is because there's a lot of women out there hitting these buzzer beaters on you guys. There's a lot of women out there dropping back 4th and goal, 4th and 50 from the 50-yard line, and you need to hit a 50-yard Hail Mary Aaron Rodgers, one play J to the end zone, touchdown with 3 seconds left on the clock in the 4th quarter to win the game. Guys, don't do it. If you're dealing with a woman and she's aged up and you met her and now let's have a baby and nah, you need to get on solid ground. You need to get to know that person first for a while. You need to understand who that person is. You need to understand what things are going to be compatible, what things are not. And some of the criteria that I just previously mentioned, the who and the what, those are very, very critical. And I see a lot of you goofies out here making that mistake. You don't take the time to get to know the other person. You don't take the time to understand what your core values are and if they align with the other person's core values. You didn't take the time to plan a family out. And in the end, if you fail to plan, then your plan's going to fail.
I'm gonna show you.
Kids is not a plan that you want to fail with. My best advice is to not be influenced so much by all the external factors that are going on in your life and the other people around you's life. Just because your parents are pressuring you to have a baby, that doesn't mean you need to have a baby. Just because your parents want you to become a parent and they want some grandkids right away, if it's not the right time for you and you don't have the right partner in your life that's going to be your long-term partner, there could be potential consequences, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
100%.
I was going to jump into the how to have a baby, but I don't think I need to cover that for you guys. You guys seem like you already got that part of the game down, so I'm not going to get into that. Let's jump into a very important factor, and that is the cost of having a child.
Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry.
2024, based on a 2023 estimate, if you had a child in 2023, it's going to cost you an average of $306,924 to raise a child for 17 years until they're 18. That's equating to roughly between $16,000 and $18,000 per year. Now, I'm going to be real with you guys. I think this study was done in some of those other lower cost of living areas, because if you look at the cost of living in these major cities, San Francisco, New York, Washington, D.C., L.A., Chicago, Miami, this number could blow all the way up to $600,000, $700,000, $800,000. And not only that, they didn't even include any educational costs if you chose that you wanted to send your children to private school.
You got a career?
Private school alone could potentially be $3,000 to $5,000 or more per month per child. I don't think it even really factored in those specific costs. If you factor in those costs and you'd like your child to have a private school education, the number could be $800,000, $900,000 upwards towards $1 million to have a child. If you look at dividing $1 million for those parents that want to give their children the best by, let's just say, roughly 18 years, you're probably looking at $42,000 to $45,000 per year per child. Do you have an extra $42,000 to $45,000? I don't know. A lot of people don't. If you're watching this right now, you probably don't. So let's keep it 100 out here in these streets. If you think, okay, well, I can raise my child for less. I've seen studies where they're saying $8,000 to $12,000. Okay, fine. $8,000 to $12,000. That seems pretty reasonable. But if you take the average income of a man in the United States, the average income is only $42,000 a year. And if you take taxes out of that, which we're just going to say 25%, what are you looking at now? 31 something $1,000. And then now you have to minus off $8,000 to raise a child. It looks like struggle season to me. You know, generations ago, inflation wasn't what it was. The
I don't
money
care.
didn't work the way it did now. Things were different. 40, 50, 60 years ago, there could be a one-income household raising a very large family. They could do it off one income. Maybe they didn't have the best. Maybe they didn't have family vacations. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. But I can guarantee you right now, you're not raising 8 kids, 6 kids, 5 kids, even 4 kids right now off of a one income, for average income, $40,000, $45,000, $50,000 a year salary. It's not going to happen. If your money is funny, you don't need to be having kids. Let's delve into that a little bit more. We talked about just providing your child just the basics. So that's going to cost you anywhere from $8,000 at the absolute bottom, like bottom of a barrel type of being a parent.
You're fired.
Versus all the way up to $18,000, which would be closer to representing maybe an average upbringing of a child. Maybe there's a couple of little swimming lessons in there. Maybe there's a couple little vacations and a couple little experiences that you'd want to be able to give your child. With that being said, I personally think that if you do not have an abundance well above and beyond this $18,000 a year, you don't really need to be having children, because it's unfair. It's the most unfair thing that a parent can do is bring children into this world to be struggling. Just because you're poor, that doesn't mean that you have to bring other people into this world to be poor with you.
100%.
You're setting their life up to be hard. You're setting them up to struggle right next to you. And it's one of the most selfish things that you can do as a parent is having children when you can't afford children. This goes for both sides of the fence. Men, I'm talking to you primarily because you guys are out here, letting these ladies hit these buzzer beaters on you.
We're in the
4th
game.
and 50 from the 50-yard line with 3 seconds left, trying to take the game to overtime. Losing. You're out here losing out here. Meanwhile, the women are winning. They done locked you in. They're 46 years old. Maybe they're 39. Maybe they're 45. I don't know. Maybe you're close to the same age. Now you're popping a kid now. Even if you're 39 and you're popping a kid, you're not going to be done raising kids until you're 57. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, quite honestly. You're almost at retirement age and you're chasing kids around still? You're still having kids to raise?
Who are you?
I don't know. But getting back to it, bringing children into the world is supposed to be a source of joy and happiness, which, do not get me wrong, having children can be one of the most rewarding experiences that you can have as a parent.
100%.
You get to play the creator.
I am a
You
god.
get to be a god and create another god in your likeness. You get to be a proud father. There's a lot of moments throughout raising children where you're going to have the most satisfaction that you've ever had. And it's going to be satisfaction on a different level than other achievements that you might be able to do. So what? You went in the business world and you made $1 million. When your kid gets the game-winning hit in the Little League World Series game, that's going to be one of your proudest moments as a parent, and you're going to be looking back on that as one of your best memories in life.
100%.
Or when your daughter, is 6 years old and she's playing the piano and she wins first place at the piano playing competition.
Martha?
That's going to be a very proud moment. And there's going to be many other proud moments throughout your children's upbringing. They're going to go to their first day of school. They're going to graduate from high school. They're going to go to their first prom. They're going to get their first car. They're going to have their driver's license. They're going to be doing things and growing in life, and you're going to be proud. And it's an extreme source of happiness that you can get from that. So there are a lot of benefits and can be a lot of happiness that comes with having children. However, if you don't have the financial resources, it's going to be a point of stress. It doesn't matter how old you are. I don't care if you're 45. I don't care if you're 50. If you don't got the money, having children is going to be a point of financial stress, and it's also going to put more stress on your relationship. My personal idea about having children might be different from a lot of people's idea, and that's okay. To each his own. But I'm just giving you an insight into what I think the ideal situation would and could be, and why you should not make that choice. Now, another thing I'm going to throw out there, ideally, is if you're too young to be having a kid, then you don't need to be out here playing the game. Don't be out here 14, 15, 16, 17, playing around out here, raw dogging it out here in these streets. I don't think that my channel gets a lot of young kids on here, but I'm just going to throw it out there. I did cover that the ideal age of having a child, in my opinion, is from 26 to 28 up to 34 to 36, based on factors that I already laid out. If you're less than that age, you're probably not in the financial position to be having a child, and you're probably going to be raising your child in struggle season. You're probably going to be barely able to get the things that you need. You're probably barely going to have the money that you need. You're not also going to be a mature adult, and you're not going to be able to give your child the information. You're not going to have knowledge to kick them down. You're not going to have extra resources to help them do the things that they might want to do in life.
100%.
And for that reason, you're actually burdening them with the life that you're giving them, without having enough resources initially to bring them into this world comfortably.
You've heard that before, right?
Let's check in with some of these other people and see what they have to say about how much does it cost to raise a kid in this day and age.
To raise kids in this day and age. Based on recent studies, the average cost of raising one child, varies based on their age from $8,000 a year up to $32,000 per year. On year one alone, the estimated cost is $8,000. This is purchasing essentials such as clothing, nappy chair, all that kind of stuff. As children grow, as do their hobbies, as do their expenses. Grocery bills increase as well. So that makes the average cost of raising one child up to the age of 18 about $22,500 per year. So that means that for an average family with 3 kids, that costs about $67,500 per year on children costs alone. Over an 18-year period, that's over $1.2 million. So yes, kids are beautiful, families are beautiful, but they also can be expensive as well. There's just some basic statistics. Always happy to help. Reach out anytime.
Okay, so he broke down the numbers, and I think those numbers are in line with what I was actually saying. Again, that is a lot of money. And I feel as if, and I believe and think as if most people have children on accident. They failed to plan. Now, all of a sudden, you're having a baby. You're going to be a parent now. You didn't plan to have that child. You just had a child by default, which a lot of children come into the world that way. Not to anybody's fault, but if you're young enough and you're able to learn from other people's mistakes, and you're right here, right now, and you're listening to what I'm telling you, and you do not have kids, listen to what I'm telling you and listen to what these people are telling you here. When I was growing up, I didn't have people in my life telling me these things. I didn't have people in my life kicking any game down to me. Nobody was kicking no game down like that. All I saw people were going out and doing is having random miscellaneous kids, popping 1 kid, 2 kid, 3 kids. I can tell you right now, I've known in my life different men that have had 7 kids by 7 different women. In their early 20s, mind you. And when the subject of child support comes up, these kids' moms are only getting $50 per month child support. $50? $50, that don't even buy a bag of Pampers right now. You got 7 kids by 7 different women out here irresponsible, just throwing your meat everywhere you can go, just wagging your meat everywhere, just spewing everywhere. What are you doing, brother? You don't got no control. You don't have any sexual discipline. And that's a major reason why you're broke. That's another reason why you're probably never going to accumulate any type of level of financial success. How can you? Every penny you get is getting sucked. You can't save no money. That's just the child support. Then when you see your 7 kids, then now all of a sudden you got to take your 7 kids out. Now you got 7 kids with you all at the same time, and y'all got to go to the movies. Even if you go to the matinee and you're bringing kids, you about to spend about $200 just on movie tickets and snacks to bring your 7 kids to the movies. Does that make sense? Nah, not to me. So again, to each his own. Everybody doesn't have the discipline to actually go out in this world and execute and not make these mistakes. But if you start thinking with this up here a lot more, then you might find yourself in a better opportunity, in a better situation. I know of another person that out here irresponsible, wannabe old rapper. Oh, I'm gonna get a rap career. Bro, you 47, 48 years old and you think you about to become a rapper? Out here driving old broke down Range Rovers, messing around with weak thoughts from the street. Messed around with this girl. Bro, man, is 49 years old and ended up getting a stripper pregnant. Bro, what are you doing? You taking pages out of Drake's playbook? What are you doing? You ain't got no money.
I'm not mentioning no names.
Now, guess what? The relationship ain't work out, obviously. Now you gotta pay child support to a stripper. A old stripper, and you're 49. By the time you get done paying child support, you're going to be 68 years old. Now, guys, tell me, does that make sense? Does that make sense to you?
No.
Does that make sense to you? You're having a child at 49, almost 50, irresponsibly, mind you. And now you're paying on a child until you're 67, almost 68 years old. You'll be getting Social Security checks come in. The Social Security check comes in and it goes right back out. The child support check goes out. Every single month, it goes like this. It goes right into your hand and then another hand comes over and then takes your money right out. Thank you very much. No, don't do it. Listen to what I'm saying. Get disciplined about yourself. Create a plan. Stick to your plan. Execute on your plan. Do not let the world plan it out for you. Do not get caught up in this heat of the moment, heat of the passion, making emotionally based decisions that are going to destroy you. A lot of men get caught up in playing on women's playground. The minute you go over to that emotional playground, that's when you become the biggest loser. You met her, everything was going good. Y'all knew each other for 4 or 5 months. Oh, baby, honey, baby, sweetie, we're going to be together forever. Boop. She's pregnant now. What you going to do now? You want to keep the kid? Yeah, I want to keep the kid. Wow. You knew she was going to want to keep the kid. So here you are, having a baby. That's going to wrap it up for today's episode of the Funtendo Game Show, where we give you game, we talk about life, and we talk about everything that matters to you.
100%.
When you got game, life ain't the same.